Right, so we're continuing the example. We've created a simple table person and we're now going to see how we can use it. I did actually just change something on here, which was this. The decimal, this decimal here, this type is, the length is the first, this represents the length, the first digit, and the second digit represents number of decimal places. So for height for a person, we need 4.2. We don't need 8.2. 8.2 would be if you were dealing with larger numbers. So at the moment, what's happened is we've created a table, and we can put data into the table, and we can retrieve the data. Let's just get rid of this person BMI drop column. But obviously, one table is not going to be a whole lot of use to anybody. So really, what we want to do is create something a bit more substantial, and we might want to, for example, say how healthy is this person. So I'm going to create, let's say, table health, and I'm going to create table health. So health ID is an integer, primary key, identity 1, 1. Then I'm going to say something that relates to health itself. So I'm going to say here, I want health status, good or bad health. Just call this 15. And we'll just leave it at that for the moment. So that's a pretty simple table. And for such a simple table here, we're just providing a health status. So insert into health, and the things that obviously different aspects of health, worst situation, someone could be dead. So someone could be in good health. We need values here. Someone could be terminally ill. Someone could be recovering. Or someone could be let's just say under treatment. So it's a pretty simple table here, isn't it? And this all relates to health as a subject. So we're not here concerned with how we're using the health, because this could be applied into different situations. I mean, we could say it's applied to a person or a parrot or a dog or chimpanzee or whatever. It's anything where health has some sort of meaning. So this data group here, this data item has a distinct meaning which is different to person, so it goes in its own table. And this is a very important concept in relational database design, that you don't want to sort of mix everything up. So what you wouldn't do is then put in the person table health status. That would be absolutely terrible design, because the data at a conceptual level, at a business level, they have totally different meanings. So a person relates to a human being, and health relates to not only people but to animals, and to lots of other things. And you could even extend a wider meaning to health in terms of someone being financially healthy and so on. So in a medical sense, it has a different meaning. We want to relate these two things together, so we then have to decide how we're going to do this. And the obvious thing to do is simply to add health ID into person. So if I alter table, in fact, well, we'll keep it simple for the moment. We'll just say alter table, add health ID integer, and that's it. So now what we've done in table is we've created the person's health as an ID. Now we want to put a default value there, so if I go back to table, I'm going to say the default is 2, so we have some data here, so health ID equals 2. So everyone is healthy. So let's go back to my data. Now so what we're going to say now is, when we want to find out the status, if someone's healthy or not, we have to refer to the health table and health ID. The reason why health status doesn't go here is because it's not only a different type of data, but it means instead of just storing a number, you're storing the phrase good health potentially thousands of times, and you just don't need to do that. You just simply need to store a number. And also, if you start to try and manipulate, let's say you change, instead of saying good health, you change the meaning of that. You say it's very healthy, then you don't have to change any other data. Just change one row in one table, and that's your entire change. If you start including health status in all the other tables, you would then have to go through and change all the other tables. You'd have a potentially horrendous task on your hands. If you had a production system with millions of records, you'd have to update maybe 30 million records because someone had changed the wording on something. Whereas doing it the other way, you only have to change one row in one table, which takes 5 seconds, but to update 20 million records could take a long time. And you can imagine if you had 1,000 of these different types of changes to make in the system, you'd be doing billions of updates versus updates of 2,000 or 3,000. So there are lots of reasons why you want to do it this way. So we want to join the tables together now. So basically I have two tables, person and health, and I want to join them. So I want to say where my person is P, and then I want to say where P health ID well, what I'll do is I'll show you the old-fashioned way of doing things, which is just this. Health. Health ID, age is equal, farm house sector, where P equals invalid column health. That should be ID there. Okay, so you can see it's come back with good status there, good health. So all I've done there is just join the two. This is the old-fashioned way of doing things. And in the new way, we would just say inner join health on. H. And we get to do exactly the same. So we just say inner join here instead of the column, and we say on. So we've now created. Now if we want to, we now have the meaning of health status. So if I say I only want health status of people who are terminally ill, I find nobody is terminally ill. But if I now go in and change my data, terminally ill is status 3, so I'm going to make someone terminally ill. Let's say, let's change one of the dates here. So I'm going to update person. I'm going to say I'm going to set person age to equal 97, and my health ID is equal to 3, where person ID is equal to 5. So I've now created a situation where I get John back because John is terminally ill because his health status has changed. If we look at just the raw dates there, I've changed the status 3 there. So this concept in programming is in SQL querying is basically called a relational database model. So the relationship here is that the health ID is being used to join the two tables. We've already defined how these can be primary keys, so we know health ID is a primary key, and on this table it's actually called a foreign key. So that's the concept that we've got here, that we have the primary key, which is health, and our health data is completely separate to person data, and then we then discover that person data is related to health, and we can add that there. And we could, of course, if we wanted to be a bit more purist about it and we wanted to just take health ID off that completely, what we can do is we can just say alt table person drop column health ID and create a whole new table, and I'm just going to call this person health. So I'm going to say person health ID is an integer, as a primary key, 1, and then I'm just going to put in the keys from those other tables. So in this, the advantage of this system is I'm not here making any assumptions about anything, because if I don't want to include, I don't have to put any default value in for health ID. I simply don't put the record in at all. So if I want to include data in the person health table, I simply put in the person ID, and then I put in the health that relates to that ID, and then I can just interrogate that table, and I don't have to worry about the person table or the health table. I'm simply using this, and this would be especially important if you wanted to record the health over time. So in other words, somebody was in good health and they're in bad health and so on. So the person would have a different health according to the actual time that was relevant. So if we wanted to have that system, we would just say alter table, person health, and then we would add a new field, new column, add column, and I'm going to say person health date, and I'm going to just call that a date. I'm going to call it date time. We don't actually need time, but I'm just going to say date time. So what I've now done is I've created a table which will keep a full history now, because as the date, I can put a date in, and then I can put this the data, so someone could go along, go to the doctor, they could do a checkup, and they could look up, and they say, yes, you're Jim Roberts, and this is your health, and then they put it in, and you can go back a year later, and they can update it again. So we're now keeping a history, and therefore we're building up a relational model, and we can interrogate this. So what I'll do, I'll pause the video here because there's quite a lot of concepts going in. On the next one, I'll look at how you can, interrogate that a bit more. So the key thing to take away is that our tables, select from health. So we've got two tables, and the data, the type of data is different at a business level, and that's really what we're concerned about. So we don't want to mix all this data. We don't want to take this column here and somehow sort of drag it over into the person table and get it all mixed up, because that will lead to a mass of confusion when we try and manipulate the data later. So when you look at the person table, it's just got to be data that only relates to the actual person, and when you look at health, it must only relate to actual health. And you will build another table which would then stipulate, which is this third table, which would then stipulate how exactly the person's health is recorded over time. And this is how we're building up a relational model, and these are the two primary keys, and then when they're referenced in another table, they're called foreign keys, and this is a relationship. And just finally, a bit of terminology, that if you say one health, for example, someone's in good health, can obviously appear many times in this table, and we've just said also one person can have a chronological record, so one person can have many records here. So we say this is a one-to-many relationship from person to person health, and health to person health is one-to-many also. And this, in just terminology introduction, this is called entity relational diagramming. So they're the terms we use, and we'll look at those a bit later on. So that's what we've discovered today: how to design some tables and how to manipulate tables.